My name is Maddie, and you are watching True Summer Knits. Thank you for tuning in today. It's finally time for another podcast episode. It's been like a month and a half since I've shown you guys what I'm actually working on. I took a few weeks off, kind of, and then last week-ish, I came out with my October pattern release video, which you should check out if you haven't seen. But I'm finally here to show you what I've been knitting and what I've got in terms of yarn, and I'm super excited. So I've got so much to talk about considering it's been a long time, so we are just gonna get right into it. So I have two finished objects today, and I feel like the one I should probably start with is the one that I'm wearing. I've never shown this on the podcast before. It was such a quick knit. I knit this in a week and 2 days. I started this on a Saturday, and I finished it not the Tuesday after, but the next Tuesday, so super fast. And it took such little yarn, and I think it's my favorite thing I've ever made. So this is the Kirby top by bluesquirrelyoom. She is a Korean designer. I've seen some of her stuff before, but when I saw this pattern, I knew this was like the perfect pattern for me. I had to cast it on right away, and I did. So the story of how I got this yarn, this is a Cardiff Cashmere Classic. It's not the yarn that's called for in the pattern, but she doesn't really call for any yarn, and I'll tell you what I mean in a second. But I got this cashmere when me and my husband were in Alabama a few weeks ago. It was our 1-year wedding anniversary, and we went to Fairhope, Alabama, which is somewhat close to us, but it's kind of a drive, so I never go over there. But they've got a yarn store over there that is called, I'll show you, Southern Twist Yarns, and I've really wanted to check them out. It seems like a nice place. So when we were over there, we went, and I wanted to get some yarn because it was like our anniversary, and they had 8 balls of Cardiff cashmere in the shade Hashi, which is one that I've seen before online. The product photo looks so different than this. It looks like a reddish orange color. So I was really nervous to ever order it, but I really liked the photos that people posted of their projects on Ravelry. It looked like a completely different color. So when I saw this in person, it was the only color they had, I knew I really wanted it. So this is kind of like a neutral rose color. I wouldn't say it's cool or warm. It really does feel neutral, which, usually I prefer cool colors, but I still feel like this rose color looks really good on me, and I'm really glad I got it. I got 8 balls of this, which I paid a lot for it in the store. It's much cheaper to get Cardiff cashmere online, but we were there, I saw it, so I got it. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with it, because 8 balls, if you know Cardiff cashmere, these are 25 gram balls. It's not a lot of yarn when you only get 8 balls, and typically a sweater quantity would be maybe like 10 balls. So I was thinking maybe like a short sleeve sweater or one of my vintage tops. I really wasn't sure what I was going to do with it, but then I saw this pattern and I knew it would be perfect. So the gauge for this pattern is 21 stitches per 4 inches. And usually with cashmere, or this brand of cashmere, I prefer a tighter gauge because I feel like it's a thin yarn. I feel like it's very thin for a DK especially. So normally I knit it at more like a sport weight, like maybe like 26 stitches per 4 inch. So I was nervous to try this, but I went ahead and swatched, and I really liked it. She knit hers on 4mm needles. I had to knit mine on 4.5 to get gauge, but I don't think it looks too loose, and when I was knitting it, it seemed like my tension was a little uneven, but when I blocked it, it all went away, and it was perfect. So yeah, I think this is a perfect yarn for this pattern, assuming you can't get the yarn she used, which you probably can't because she doesn't even list a brand. Again, she's a Korean designer, so this must just be some local yarn she got in Korea. It's actually a raccoon yarn, which I had never heard of. There are so many fibers now that I'm hearing of that I never would have thought you could make into yarn. So the yarn she used, she doesn't have a brand, but the contents listed are 35% raccoon, 30% wool, and then the rest is polyamide. I'm assuming to strengthen it, I'm not really sure. But in the pictures, it looks like a very lightweight, fluffy yarn. I used much less in terms of grams than she did, so I'm not sure about yardage, but like I said, this took very little amount of yarn for me. I bought 8 balls of the Cardiff cashmere, and I only needed 5.5. So I've got like, I'll show you what I've got left over. So this is what I have left over of my 6th ball, which I'm not sure, it might be like half or like a quarter of a full ball. And then I've got 2 more balls left over. So if you have any ideas for what I can do with this leftover cashmere 2.5-ish balls, let me know. I know the standard answer would be like a Sophie scarf or penny gloves, but I just don't think I'd ever use those items, so I'm not really sure. I was considering maybe doing shell bra by Naked Knit, but I'm not sure if I have enough yarn. But if you have any other ideas, please let me know. I'm very much open to suggestions. But seriously, it was a quick knit, took barely any yarn. I mean, for a full garment made out of Cardiff cashmere, that is such a small amount of yarn. So it's really a really good project if you want to spend less and have a full garment out of cashmere. I definitely recommend this pattern. But more into the actual construction of the pattern, this is a dolman sleeve pattern, which is definitely a more uncommon kind of construction, at least in the knitting community, at least that I've seen. If you don't know what a dolman sleeve is, it's similar to, well, it might actually be the same thing as like a batwing sleeve, where the entire sleeve is connected to the body in this kind of triangular fashion. And it creates this interesting drape when you have your arms down. I really like the silhouette it creates. But construction-wise, it's very similar to a raglan. So raglan is obviously the very basic construction. It's like everyone can knit a raglan, and this is knit very similarly. So if you haven't knit a raglan, you basically start with a circle and you cordon off these 4 sections. You have these 4 stitches that you're working around, essentially. And for each of these 4 stitches are on either side of the shoulder, on either side of your body, and you're increasing on either side to create a sleeve, the front, the back, and that's pretty much all the shaping you have for your upper body. And it works really well. You can get like a very fitted construction, or a very fitted shaping with a raglan, but instead of having the 4 sections, you are increasing on either side of a main stitch like a raglan, but you only have 2, and they both go down this central seam of the shoulder, so to speak. So the yoke pretty much extends down the entire sleeve, and it's a lot of the front here. Once you do all of those increases for a long time, it's like a majority of this project, then you separate for the front and the back, and you're not knitting flat for very long because you're basically just adding length to the side of the sleeve and this front section here, and you're doing these decreases to kind of taper in the sleeve and get closer to the amount of stitches needed for the body. So this is my first issue with this pattern. The way she does the decreases for the sleeves, I think is not ideal. I'm not going to say it's a mistake because maybe that's how she intended, but look at it this way. So when you're doing these decreases, anytime you're doing increases or decreasing for like shaping around something that's going to be visible, you're going to have some kind of border, and then you want either the decrease or the increase to blend into that border so it looks seamless. So for example on here, you have this 2-stitch border. So you would, when you're doing these decreases, you're working from this way, you do knit 2, decrease, knit to the end, decrease, and then knit 2 on the other side. So ideally, you want that decrease to blend into the border so it just looks like you have 2 stitches seamlessly going down the entire thing, and the other stitches are just morphing into that 2-stitch border, if that makes sense. So this way, the stitches that you have currently are going to be leaning this way, towards the right, if you're knitting it flat. But then the 2-stitch border, since you're decreasing, is going to be leaning in the other direction. So since that 2-stitch border is what your decrease is going to become, you want your decrease to lean the same direction as that 2-stitch border. So this 2-stitch border is leaning left, even though you're on the right side. So your decrease should be a left-leaning decrease, and on this side it should be a right-leaning decrease. But the way she has it written in the pattern is over here she has a right-leaning decrease and a left-leaning decrease over here. So it makes the decrease stitch very obvious because it's leaning the opposite direction that it should be. it's leaning opposite from the 2-stitch border that it's technically a part of now. And I feel like that sounds more complicated than it is. I'll try to put some pictures up so you can see what I mean, because I did the entire back panel the way she described it in the pattern, so my decreases are leaning in the wrong direction essentially. And then the whole time I was doing it, I was like, these look so weird. Something is wrong. I don't know. I'm not liking the way these decreases look. I couldn't figure out what it was. And then when I got to the front, that's when I realized they were leaning the wrong direction. So if you knit this, I mean, it's up to you, but I feel like it looks a lot better if you reverse the decreases that she has written. So over here you would do an SSK instead of a knit two together, and over here you do a knit two together instead of an SSK. And it looks a lot better that way in my opinion, but I don't know. The only other thing I noted about this pattern is that when you begin, you cast on for the neck, so you're just knitting in the round for this funnel neck, mock neck situation. And the way she has it, and it's done in the pattern and it's done in her sample, it looks super nice. She casts on, and then she immediately does these 4 rows of double knitting. So you slip one, knit one, sew on for 4 rows. And that creates this little edge that has some stability in her photo, and it looks like just stockinette all the way down. So you don't have to do like any other kind of stitch to make it not roll. But I was not able to do that. I tried it a couple times, and every time I would try to fit it over my head, and it created such a tight edge that I couldn't get it over my head. So I don't know what exactly I was doing wrong. I tried it a few times, but she says in her pattern that you're meant to spread out the double knitting stitches on your needles the way you would spread out stitches for horizontal color work. I don't know what that means. I've never done color work before, so there's probably something that I'm not getting, and when I knit this again, which I've already gotten the yarn to knit it again, and I'll show you later. When I do it again, I think I'm going to try to spread out the stitches and see if it creates something that I can put over my head, but I couldn't get it to do that. So here's what I did instead. I cast on, and then I did 3 rows of ribbing. So it was a very short amount of ribbing. It was like this big. And then as I was knitting the rest of it, I really wasn't sure if I wanted to just keep the ribbing. This yarn is very lightweight and drapey, so it was kind of like falling down a little bit, and I wasn't sure if it would have the stability to actually stay a funnel neck, you know what I mean, and not just flop down. But I knew blocking would help it some. But when I got to the end, what I ultimately decided to do was I folded down the 3 rows of ribbing so you could only see the stockinette on the outside, and then I went around the entire neck on the inside of the fabric. I picked up a stitch through the purl bump of the 3rd row of stockinette, like where the ribbing met the stockinette, and then I also picked up that stitch through the top row of the ribbing on the inside. So I'm like connecting them together, I'm picking up a stitch, I do that around the entire inside, and then I just immediately bound off all those picked up stitches using the Jenny Surprisingly Stretchy bind off, and it worked. It added like stability because it's got more fabric right at the upper edge of the collar, and it still remains stretchy because of the bind off I used, and you get to keep that like stockinette look. But I will be honest, I prefer her version, and if I can get it to fit over my head, I would like to do her version. So I'm going to attempt it again next time. If you have any ideas on how I can successfully complete this activity, please let me know, because I'm not really sure how to get it to fit. But other than that, when you get to the body, you're doing some decreases when you connect the sleeve. That it's sleeve decreases, but it's also kind of waist decreases to taper it in towards the body. It's hard to explain, but something that she does is whenever you're doing some kind of shaping decrease, like you're doing sleeve decreases or waist decreases, the typical way that is written in patterns is to do like a knit 2 together and then an SSK. But instead of doing the 2 separate decreases, she has you do a central double decrease, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds. It's a double decrease, so you're decreasing 2 stitches at once, and the stitch doesn't lean left or right, it's like just leaning central. But I find that it's like kind of a bulky looking decrease. It's very visible, and it creates like this raised bump, since I guess there's so much bulk there. So it's not noticeable because, I mean, it's on the inside of your sleeve. There's only a few of them. Next time I might try just doing the knit two together and slip knit to see if that creates less bulk, but ultimately I don't think it really matters because you can't see it, but I just thought that was interesting. Normally you only see central double decreases in like lace knitting and stuff. I've never seen it in a garment the way she uses it, so very interesting. But then the rest of the body's knitted in the round. I knit mine right to the high hip, so like right where the top of my hip bone is. And then you do a couple inches of ribbing, finish it off with 2 rows of double knitting, and then you do an Italian bind off. And then the only finishing there is going back and picking up all of these sleeve stitches, and you're just doing a double knitted edge. And that makes it look really nice and finishes it off amazingly. And it's ultimately just very simple, but there's a lot of really nice details to make this a really polished piece. So ultimately, I think this is like my favorite thing I've ever knitted. I've been wearing it non-stop. I just wanted to show everybody. I feel like it fits perfectly. Just the way it looks on me is amazing, and I cannot get enough of this. So I already have the yarn to make another one. It knit up so fast. Again, a week and 2 days. That is so fast. Use such little yarn, so I might have another one soon. I might just go ahead and knit another one, even though I've got other stuff I need to be working on. It's just so nice, and I want this in like a million different colors. So I definitely recommend this pattern. Kirby top by bluesquirrelyoom. Amazing. So my next finished object, which technically is my first finished object. I finished this before I finished this one, and it's one I've actually shown you before. So this is the Cumulus blouse by petiteknit. If you are in the knitting community, I'm sure you've heard of this one. You may have even knit it yourself. It's a very popular pattern, and for a reason, it's really nice. It's meant to be knit in this fluffy kind of yarn. Her original sample has 2 strands of mohair held together, but I made mine with 1 strand of drops brushed alpaca silk in the shade Pacific Blue. It's a very budget-friendly option. It's like a cheap yarn, but it's a nice yarn. I get my drops yarn from Wool Warehouse now, so if you're in America, it's a good place to get it. It's cheap, and they have cheaper shipping, and it's fast shipping. So yeah, I recommend them, and that's where I got this from. This took just under 6 balls exactly, like I've got barely any yarn left. But I did crop mine because I've got a short torso, so I crop everything. So keep that in mind if you're also knitting a size small. But another thing is I did knit a size small, and I cast on for the size small, but my gauge was off, and I didn't realize until I had gotten at least like an inch or so done of the beginning increases that my gauge was off. So the intended gauge for this pattern is 18 stitches per 4 inches, but I realized my gauge was 20 stitches per 4 inches, which doesn't sound like a lot, but especially for something that is closer fitting than like an oversized sweater, makes a big difference. So I didn't really want to start over. I figured I could make it work, you know? So what I did, I ended up reading through the pattern, and it was a very simple fix. I did not have to change much at all. Basically, when you cast on and you set up to do all your raglan increases, you're knitting flat for a while because obviously you have to shape this V-neck. But she gives you these 4 rows that you have to repeat, and they're the instructions for the raglan increases. And she tells you to repeat them 11 times for size small. So I realized I could do the entire pattern as written for size small and not change anything if I repeated those 4 rows 2 more times. So I repeated the 4 rows 13 times, so I got like extra stitches on my needles, and then I could follow the rest of the pattern completely as written and make no other changes and get the size small as intended. So if you knit this pattern, you get my gauge, you don't want to make any other adjustments, that's what I did. And if you check my Revelry page, I include like my stitch counts as the pattern goes on, just so you can kind of see like what effect that change had on my stitch count. If that is useful to you, I don't know, but just in case, I included that there. So it was a simple fix, and I really like the way it fits. I'm gonna have to include some footage of me wearing it, and yeah, it's really nice. It's just a simple raglan. Now, the only other thing, so for the edges, she has you do a pretty standard I-cord, like applied I-cord bind off, but the only thing that she does differently is every 4 repeats of the I-cord, she has you, instead of knitting 2 together, like when you're attaching the I-cord to the sleeve, she has you knit 3 together so that you are decreasing one of the stitches of the actual sleeve. And she has you do that every 4 repeats, so it prevents from flaring out. That's what she says in the pattern. But lately I've been such a tight knitter. I mean, that's why my gauge was smaller, is because I've been such a tight knitter. So I think it worked out okay for the sleeves. But for the actual body, I started doing the I-cord at the back of the body, and I was doing those decreases, and I found that it was just too cinched in, like it was almost kind of gathering a little bit. So once I got near to the front, I just stopped doing the decreases. It didn't make that much of a difference, but I feel like if I knit this again, I'm just going to skip the decreases altogether. So I think if you knit this and you're a tight knitter, when you're doing the decreases, I would just keep a close eye on it and make sure it's actually turning out the way you want it to, because, you know, I feel like if I'd done it all the way around, it would have made a little bit of a rippling in the fabric and it wouldn't have looked as nice. So I just wanted to make a note of that. But other than that, I really enjoy this yarn. It's definitely thicker and denser than a mohair. It's kind of like 2 strands of mohair held together, but even then the fluff itself is more compact and there's just like more fluff in general. And I find that the alpaca is much softer on the skin than mohair. Even soft mohairs, I feel like they can have hairs that kind of poke you. I'm not too sensitive to it, like I can still wear it, but it's not like insanely soft. But this doesn't bother me at all. It's really soft against the skin. So if you don't like mohair but you still want to try a fluffy yarn, I'm not saying you won't be sensitive to it, but it's worth experimenting with. It's a cheap yarn, so if you don't like it, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world. But yeah, I feel like that's everything I have to say about it. This took me like 3 weeks to knit. Obviously, it gets a lot more boring after you're just knitting in the round, but it really helped keep me motivated that I really liked this yarn and I was really liking the fit. So yeah, I feel like that's the trade-off. Either the pattern has to really engage me or the yarn has to really engage me. Because if it's neither of those, then I'm not going to be super interested in actually finishing the project. You know what I mean? That is my Cumulus blouse. Next, I'm going to get straight into my works in progress. I also have 2 works in progress, and these are both gift knits. So I'm going to show you the one that's been on the needles the longest. And again, this is also kind of an acquisition because I got this yarn since my last podcast episode. So this is a gift from my mother-in-law. This is the Pamila scarf. I'll put the designer name up on the screen. It's just this smaller scarf, not like small like the Sophie scarf, but it's definitely smaller than like, you know, a regular size scarf. It's meant to be thinner and worn kind of around your neck. I guess it's the definition of a scarf. But it's this lace piece. It's really pretty. I'm still working on my increases, so it's like shaped like a triangle. And it's got these 2 different lace borders around it. That helps keep it engaging because there's like a different kind of lace on either side. And then a lot of it is done in stockinette, but you also have these little knot stitches. And then you have these bobbles or nups, I guess is what they're called. And that is really the challenging part of it. There's a lot of charts, it's all charted. She's got just like your regular charts, and then she's got charts that include the increases and the decreases, which is mostly what I follow because it makes it easier because it's all in one place. Because it's hard to remember like all of the repeats that you're doing and then also your increases if you don't have them charted. So that's pretty much what I've been using. She does have written instructions, but I just haven't used them at all. But it's kind of difficult to make these nups because you have to basically, you're working with 1 stitch on the right side. In that 1 stitch, you knit 1, pull the loop through, but you don't pull the actual stitch off the left needle. You knit 1, pull that loop through, yarn over, pull that loop through, and repeat that 3 times, all into the same stitch. So basically you have 7 loops on your needle all in one stitch. And then on the wrong side, you're meant to purl all 7 of those loops together, which is very difficult. I was not able to actually purl 7 together. The fix that I used, and that pretty much everyone in the comments recommended you use, is slip all 6 loops. So you slip 6 stitches onto your right needle, and then you purl 1 stitch, and you slip all of those 6 stitches over the purl stitch. And that is essentially the same as purling 7 together. And it worked very well for me. Hopefully you can see the texture. But it's really beautiful, it's really feminine. I'm knitting this with 2 strands held together. I'm using knitpicks gloss lace, which is a lace weight 30% mulberry silk, 70% merino wool. It's just a nice yarn. And then 1 strand of knitpicks aloft, which is their silk mohair. Let me just say, this is the softest mohair I've ever felt. It is so soft. I mean, it's really amazing. Like, it's softer than knitting for Olive. I don't know about Issachar, I've never felt their mohair, but next time I knit a garment with mohair, I'm gonna try theirs. They definitely have less colors, and some of the colors are a lot brighter than I might like to use, but it's just so nice. I've got to make something out of it. If you've never tried it, I really recommend you use it. I can't believe it's not like a bigger thing in the knitting community, but there's not so much I have to say about this. It's kind of time consuming, and I like it, but I prefer working on garments. So I need to really commit to like putting in a few rows every day if I'm gonna get this done before Christmas, because lately I've been focusing a lot more on my garment whip, which I'll tell you about next, and I've been not working enough on the scarf, so I've got to prioritize that. But there's nothing wrong with the pattern, it's a fun pattern, I just prefer garments. But it is interesting to have like a more involved knit than I've been doing in the past few months. But yeah, that's my Pamila scarf. I really like it, and I'm excited to finish it and give it to my mother-in-law. So my next whip is a garment whip, like I said, and this is the Melange sweater, which I am knitting for my husband for Christmas. If you've been watching me, you will know that this was meant to be an anniversary present, but I put it off for too long, so now it's a Christmas present. So this is knitted in Knitting for Olive merino and soft silk mohair in the shade Trenchcoat, which I've had that yarn for a while, and I bought specifically for him because this kind of like brown camel color is not one that I would wear. It's just like warm to me, and this color does not spark joy, so it's a color that he loves and I know he'll wear, so that's why I've got it. But it's not like the most exciting color to knit with because it's not a color that really appeals to me. So I had been planning to use this yarn to knit a hand swim sweater for him, which is petiteknit's like standard raglan pattern for a man. But I had been knitting the Cumulus blouse, and I knit this blouse, which is done very similarly to a raglan. So I wanted to switch things up a little bit, and when I looked through all her patterns, the Melange sweater seemed to be her basic sweater pattern, drop shoulder style for a man. So that pattern is obviously meant to be knit with 2 colors held together. I'm just not doing that. I'm just knitting it with 1 color. Obviously that's fine, but that just seemed to be her only pattern that was like a drop shoulder sweater for a man. So I'm knitting this in size extra small. My husband is a skinny guy. We actually have the same bust measurement, so we can kind of share clothes. But he'll really like this. It seems to be fitting him well. It's definitely more of a fitted garment. It doesn't have like much positive ease. It's just a very nice fitted everyday sweater that I think he'll really like. The way this is constructed is like pretty much most drop shoulder sweaters that are knitted top down. You cast on all the stitches for the upper back, and then you start doing short rows to shape your shoulders. And that's one thing I wanted to talk about. I feel like my short rows, they're German short rows, are very visible. See if you can see them. I think they're more visible on the side where I go from purling to knitting. I don't know why that is, but I just find they're very visible. Like the stitch just gets bulkier or something. On this side, like I said, they're less visible. But it's making me think and consider about experimenting with different ways of doing short rows. I know there's like Japanese short rows, like a bunch of other methods. So if you've tried other methods and you think you know about ones that are more invisible, like in stockinette, let me know, because I'd be interested in playing around and trying some different methods. I feel like German short rows are the ones that everyone uses, and it might be interesting to try something new. But it's not the end of the world. The other thing about the shoulders is when you pick up stitches for the shoulders, like for the front shoulders, she tells you to pick up in between the stitches, and she says that will create a more continuous look. For me though, it created like a very obvious seam. So on the other side, I just picked up stitches the way I would normally pick up stitches, and it looked a lot better. I mean, it's still visible. You can still see where the stitches are picked up, but it was not as obvious as when I tried to do what she described. It's definitely possible that the way I think to pick up stitches is actually what she's describing. So I was like doing opposite of what she described when I tried doing it differently. I'm not sure, but yeah, I just found that if I just picked up stitches how I normally would, it looked a lot better. I don't know why that is, but it is. So that's that. But again, the shoulders, not the worst thing in the world. But then after you begin working each of the front shoulders, you do some shaping for the neck, and then you connect the two shoulders, cast it on for the neck, and then you're just knitting a bunch of stockinette. For size extra small, you do like 1 increase for the armholes, and then you connect everything in the round. So obviously that's where I'm at. I've just got a bunch of knitting in the round to do since boys are long and it will take a while to knit the body. But it's nice to have just a standard stockinette project for when I'm watching TV. And when I get a little more done on both of them, I will let myself cast on something that is just for me, and I cannot wait. I'm a selfish knitter. I much prefer to knit things for myself, but he's been begging me for a sweater for a long time, so I'm going to be a good wife and give him a hand-knit sweater. That's everything I have to say about the Melange sweater. So those are all my works in progress. So now I'm going to get right into my... Sorry, my dog's pattering around back there. So I'm going to get right into my acquisitions. It's been a long time since my last podcast, so I've got a bunch of acquisitions. I've already showed you a couple. I got the Cardiff cashmere for this for my anniversary. I got the knitpicks pink yarn for my mother-in-law's scarf, but I've got a few more too. I'm going to start with the most exciting one, which is actually my most recent one. So I told you I already bought yarn for my Kirby top number 2, and I'm going to show you that. So when I got the cashmere yarn for this top, like I said, I bought it in person, and it was a lot more expensive than I would pay if I bought it online. So normally in the past, I've gotten Cardiff cashmere before, and I got it from this German yarn company or yarn store called Needles and Wool, and they had the best price Cardiff cashmere that I'd seen so far. It was priced at like $14 a ball, which is much better than like the $25 a ball that I'm used to seeing on American yarn stores and pretty much everywhere else. So that's where I got it last time, and that was a really good price. But then I posted about it on my story, and someone slid up and told me about this French-Canadian store called La Meillerie, and they have it for like $12 a ball, but then it was 20% off, so it was like $10.78, and then the shipping was only $10, and it got here in like 5 days. So I wanted to jump on that opportunity of 20% off, so I went ahead and I bought 6 balls of Cardiff Cashmere Classic. Came in this really cute box. I've never had it come in a cute box before. And I got it in the shade Fuji, which is this is the most beautiful color I've ever seen, honestly. This is a very cool toned, like icy, almost grayish lilac color. It's really beautiful. It's gonna look so good on me. It's very soft, but like still packs a lot of color, you know what I mean? And it was relatively cheap for cashmere because I only got 6 balls because this one only took 5.5. And I didn't want to have leftover cashmere again to try to figure out something to do with it. So I just got what I needed, and it came in super fast. And I think I'm gonna go ahead and cast this on soon because, again, I knit this in a week and 2 days. I could get another one done pretty quick. And I am so excited to have another Kirby top in this color. I mean, it's gonna be so pretty, so beautiful, I cannot wait. But yeah, that's my cashmere that I got. I feel like it makes me sound weird to have gotten so much cashmere, but it was a really good price. I couldn't resist. My next acquisition is 6 hanks of Cascade BFL. It's their DK weight blue face Leicester wool. And I got this because I wanted to knit the tulip loop sweater, which is a pattern by Other Loops. Now that pattern is a Aran or worsted weight, but I'm either going to see if I could make gauge with this, because it's definitely a thicker DK, or I'm going to see if I could like size up and get the size I want with the DK weight, because I just thought a worsted weight sweater was too thick. It's still like 80 degrees here. It's looking like it's going to start cooling down at the end of next week, but still, the days where I can wear an Aran weight sweater do not seem to be in my future. I think I could do an Aran weight or a worsted weight cardigan, which I think is what I'm going to use my turquoise worsted weight wool for, but I don't know. I really love the design of the tulip loop sweater, but the gauge just seemed like it's going to be way too thick. So I got this, and I actually did cast it on a while ago, and I got an inch, and I have to really focus on that one because it's a little more complex, and I messed something up with a short rows or something, so things were like off. So I'm going to wait until I can focus a little more, but I definitely want to use this soon. This is in the shade, I don't know what the shade is, it's color 40, but it's this really pretty cool pink, light cool pink. It's of a similar like lightness to this one, but obviously it's much more obviously cool toned, when this one is more neutral, and in some lights this can lean warm, but this one always is very obviously cool. So I love this color. Clearly I'm really into pinks right now, and I'm really excited to hopefully create a tulip loop sweater with this. In case that I can't accomplish that, I feel like maybe I could do a cardigan. If you have any other sweater recommendations that are like pretty and would look good in this color that I could use with the DK weight, let me know. I'm always down to consider other options. But that is my Cascade BFL. This is one that I've also had for a while. This is Knitting for All of Merino. I got 5 balls of this in the shade Unicorn Purple. It's a very, very light, cool, soft purple. And I got this because I've been talking about this forever. I have these vintage knitting patterns from like 1937-ish. And one of them is called the Antoinette blouse. It's this really pretty short sleeve blouse with this cable neck, like band going around the neck. It's kind of like a boat neck. And then this ribbed cable design on the bottom half of the sweater. It's so cute. And I want to do a whole video where I knit the entire pattern. The pattern is very short and it's bottom up and it's only in one size. But thankfully the size is my size, but I'm going to adjust it to be top down. And I'm considering like rewriting the pattern for like a modern audience and grading it. But if I did that, I would want to release it. And I don't know what the ethics are for like releasing a vintage pattern that you've rewritten and graded. So I don't know. If that's something anyone has experience with or has any insight on, let me know. But if I'm going to do all that work, I'd want to be able to release it, and I just don't know if that's like cool to do. But either way, I'm going to knit it for me, and I'm going to film a whole video on the process. So I want to get that started soon because this is definitely a good fall knit, and I really want to be able to share that video. But that's going to obviously be a longer term project. It's not as cut and dry as like just following a stockinette sweater pattern. But yeah, I'm excited to knit this one too. And my last acquisition is just 2 balls of Swish worsted by knitpicks in the shade Mimic. I asked my dad what he would want if I knit him something, and he said a hat in navy blue, so a hat in navy blue he shall get. I don't even know what pattern I'm going to use. I would like something a little textured just to keep me a little engaged, but a worsted weight hat is going to take like no time at all, so let me know your favorite worsted weight hat patterns. I'll check them out. Because I'm not really a beanie person, so I've never really looked too hard at beanie patterns before, but he's a runner and he's outside a lot, so I know he'll like it. That is everything. I feel like I talked for forever, but I'm super glad that I got to finally show you what I've been working on, and I will be back next week with another video. If you like this video, please give me a like, comment, subscribe if you're not subscribed, because I really want to keep sharing all my videos with you. I feel like my channel's finally growing, and I'm really grateful and appreciative, and I'm happy to be here. So thank you again, and I will see you guys next week with another video. Bye!